Ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by, welcoming back, he's a friend of the program here, writer of Houston Football, ladies and gentlemen, Cody Stoots.
I thought you had those shades on because the Texans' future is so bright. That's what I thought you were wearing. the
You
shades
see,
for.
got him. Cody, I will let this one slide for now because you got it, brother.
Man, it's a great time. It's funny you guys talk about baseball and the women's tournament. And man, I've been diving into the draft. I've been doing all this stuff. It's still football season in Houston when you're out here signing Danielle Hunter, when you're trading for Stefon Diggs, all this other stuff.
All right, Cody, we get it. We'll get into that, okay?
You said it's a huge market.
Okay,
huge.
Listen, all of Colts Twitter's freaking the fuck out. Fire Ballard, this and that. It's just like, geez, man, you can't. The Houston Texans are just making fantastic moves. What does Ballard got to do?
I know. Why is he catching strays over there?
He's re-signed all of his guys. Like, what's the problem? You know what I mean? But I'll tell you what, it is a little tough seeing the opposing team in the division just seemingly just getting stronger on paper, Cody. So could you catch us up to speed for maybe some of us that haven't been following along, which I don't know how you haven't, with all these incredible moves the Houston Texans have been making. For some of our listeners that might have missed it, catch us up to speed a little bit.
Yeah, so the Texans, I mean, they did what they did, obviously, in the regular season. They end up winning the AFC South with a little bit of help there on that final Sunday of the season. They had the playoff run that they did, taking care of the Browns, losing to the Ravens. And they hit the offseason, and it was like, well, what are they going to do? They've got some of the most money in the NFL. They've got a bunch of draft picks. Their full complement of draft picks, even though they still made that big trade last draft, they still had their full complement of draft picks. And they got the ball rolling with free agency. And the first day was just kind of, it was really fun to watch Texans fans because they were mad Nick Caserio got robbed for executive of the year. And then at the end of day one of free agency, I had Texans fans in my mentions and on the comments on YouTube, like, we got to fire this guy. He's just sitting on his hands. He's not doing anything.
I'll tell you what, I'll give it to the NFL fans. We're like some of the most passionate fans, but maybe at the same time, some of the most dramatic fans.
Oh, yeah.
It's insane.
It's good here, not just Buffalo.
Yeah. So you get to day two of free agency, and Danielle Hunter's the signing by the Texans, and you're like, oh, okay, like executive of the year again for Nick Caserio. Like, this is incredible. Like, they fill out a really nice free agency class. Danielle Hunter's the highlight of it, obviously, but Azeez Al-Shire is a guy they wanted last year. He played linebacker for the Titans last year, played for D'Amico Ryans in San Fran before that, so they really wanted him.
I didn't know that. I guess that makes a lot of sense.
They went and got him. Danico Autry's an old guy, but he's still really good at what he does, so he's going to factor in. So the free agency class was nice. And again, hey, executive of the year again. And then Nick Caserio trades out of the first round. And you're like, fire him. That's what I heard. That's what I heard again. It's like, fire him again. So it's like the trade back with the Vikings was pretty strange. It was hard to kind of see the vision of that. They get out of the first round and add 2 second-round picks. Ultimately, they used one of those second-round picks here in the past week or so to trade for Stefon Diggs, which was quite the move. And I don't know that.
Yeah, I'd say Cody.
I don't know that anybody expected Diggs to go for what he went for. I'm sure a lot of teams would have traded a future second or maybe a third this year to get Stefon Diggs, but he ends up on the Texans. And man, they're locked, man. It's rare to have a team change over some key players that they did and feel like they upgraded. I mean, they had the franchise record for sacks last year on the defensive line, and they're going to have 3 brand new starters on the defensive line. And most people feel better about the defensive line and the chances of them having success than last year. The wide receiver room, 1 through 3. I mean, there's not many teams that can compete with that 1, 2, 3 that the Texans are running out there. Oh, by the way, they got Joe Mixon as well to upgrade the running back spot. Like, it's just been hit after hit after hit in this offseason for the Texans, and there's a ton of expectations for them going forward.
Definitely. They're for sure hitting on all cylinders this offseason, and it's like, so let's backtrack a little bit because early in the offseason period, like you said, on the first day of free agency, there, like you said, Texas fans were calling for Caserio to get fired. For the reasons maybe Texas fans were saying that, because you guys did lose some key additions on the defensive side. So, I mean, they just filled those gaps within that next week. Unbelievable. Because I know Indianapolis, it was reported that they were in on Danielle Hunter as well. Turned out, we don't know if it was Indianapolis that offered him a higher value on the contract, but he takes the hometown discount, still getting paid, by the way, hell of a contract on his end. but even to go in that situation playing for a guy like D'Amico Ryans. So now let's sort of transition to when they pick up Joe Mixon. What is your thoughts on that move? And we'll get into Stefon Diggs trade in a little bit, but I think the Joe Mixon signing is getting overseen right now with all the other moves they've been making, like you said, and like you literally just said. Oh, by the way, they also signed Joe Mixon, Devin Singletary out the door. So what do you think the plan for him is going forward? Because I mean, obviously, Dameon Pierce is in that running back room as well.
Yeah, part of the fans being upset with Caserio on day one of free agency was Texans needed a running back. They chased a bunch of these guys and they didn't get any of them. Saquon Barkley went to the Eagles. DeAndre Swift went to the Bears. Guys started to tick off the board, and the path to upgrading the running back spot, it started to get a little murky, and it started to kind of worry about what was going to happen with the running back spot. And the next morning they trade a late round pick for Joe Mixon, and he shows up coming off of a 1,000-yard rushing season with 9 touchdowns. He's absolutely the type of guy that can get you 1,500 scrimmage yards every year. And I started to think about what teams has Joe Mixon played on? What level of success has he had? And look, there's a little bit of luck involved in this, but if this Texans offensive line is healthy, everybody plays where they're supposed to play, that's a much better offensive line than what Joe Mixon has played behind in his time in Cincinnati. And so you start to get really excited about, look at the running backs that have succeeded in this style of offense, the good offensive line, and then Joe Mixon, 1,500 scrimmage yards and double-digit touchdowns. It feels like it's very much on the board and on the table because nobody's Christian McCaffrey, okay? But you look at what McCaffrey can do in that Shanahan offense, and you give a good running back this offense and a good offensive line performance, and he should have a really big year. And I'm really excited about what Joe Mixon brings to the table. The extension they gave him was a little iffy, but it's only
could you elaborate on that? Because I completely forgot they gave him an extension as well.
Yeah, so he got a 3-year extension. It's $13 million guaranteed in the contract. I mean, it's obviously 4 more if he plays out the deal. I think really, honestly, it just turns Mixon's commitment from a 1-year deal. He was set to be an expiring contract. Turns it in from basically a 1-year deal to a 2-year deal is the way I look at it. So the guaranteed money for running backs is what you care about. So just $13 million guaranteed added to the situation. Mixon's got an opportunity to play here for this year, and I would think next year. And then after that, hopefully there's somebody to, ready to take a spot. And if not, you got him under contract. You can go with him for yet another year. But the extension, the cap nerds and the salary cap nerds didn't like that. But I certainly understand why they would do that too.
Did you like that, Josh? Salary cap nerd?
I wouldn't say I'm a salary cap nerd because it still confuses the hell out of me. But I mean, that's where the Diggs thing comes in. That's where the salary cap really got me. That's irked my nerves. But giving Joe Mixon $13 million, that's around what Saquon got, and it's a little rich for my blood. But you can do that when you have a quarterback on a rookie contract.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So flipping on the other side of the spectrum, though, as you mentioned, as you elaborated on the Joe Mixon extension, seems like the Texans did almost the opposite with Stefon Diggs' contract. So the big blockbuster trade that a lot of us, I can safely say, did not see coming. Texans ship out, what was it? I got it pulled up right here. The 2025 second-round pick from the Minnesota Vikings, which literally they just got a couple weeks ago, trading out of the first round to Buffalo, acquiring Stefon Diggs, 2024 sixth-round pick, 2025 fifth-round pick, and what a move.
Yeah.
What a move.
Yeah.
So just tell us, your initial reaction to this and break it down further for maybe some of our viewers that missed out on the back end details of what's going on there.
So I think the big thing to think about when you think about the Diggs trade is basically what they did was they traded the first round pick they had this year. And what they ended up with was a second round pick this year, Stefon Diggs, a late round pick this year, and a late round pick next year. And that's a really good trade and really good use of a first round pick, because they still can add a player. The Texans believe that basically every player from 25 to 55 is the same type of guy. So they were not super concerned about moving back from 23. Now, if we're sitting here on draft night and an awesome player sitting there at 23, I'll be banging my head on the wall thinking, oh, they could have had that guy. But then I'll remember you use the additional assets to go get Stefon Diggs. So when you look at it as they moved a first and ended up with a second, Stefon Diggs, and some late round picks, it's a pretty fun trade to look at it from that standpoint. I didn't believe Diggs was on the table because I thought he would cost more. Like the Texans balked at using a third-round selection in a Keenan Allen trade, and the Bears end up with him with a early fourth-round pick. The Texans wanted to offer next year's third-round pick as well as a pick swap, but ultimately the Chargers took the fourth-round pick in this year's draft. So the Texans clearly weren't ready to go with their third-rounder this year to go get Keenan Allen, who was a really productive wide receiver last year, and then reportedly they were going to extend him. Ultimately, they go with the future second to get Diggs. Diggs has a higher end potential than Keenan Allen at this point in his career, if you ask me. One little bit younger, but part of the excitement was the contract that he did have. I mean, it was going to be guaranteed money in the first year, but after that, no guaranteed money. If he doesn't work out, if he's a diva, if the chemistry's off, you can move on from him. Or if he plays well, you get him at a pretty good number. It averaged out to about $18.5 million as a cap hit before they chopped the years off the contract. So it's like, okay, like the going rate for a pretty good wide receiver, especially when he hits free agency, is like $20 million. It's like you're getting a little bit of a deal, but they chopped the years off, moved a tiny bit of money into this year, and he basically is playing a 1 year, $20 million deal, and they spread out the cap hit with, salary cap shenanigans. And so I didn't love that aspect of it because the thought was, hey, Diggs is here. He's under contract. Nico Collins is set to be a free agent at the end of the 2024 season. If you can't get Nico extended, you've got Diggs under a contract. You've still got Tank Dell. Well, you don't have Diggs under contract anymore. Nico's still set to be a free agent. Now, obviously, moving the money around, maybe that's about keeping Nico Collins. But I like the idea of those top three being together for more than 1 year. But it's clearly where the Texans' comfort level is just having that 1 year. And it helps out Diggs a lot because if he plays really well, he hits free agency as a highly coveted name. It doesn't help out the Texans a ton, except for moving the money around and being able to spread out the cap hit. But what are they spending the money on? I don't know. I mean, there's not a free agent I'd go out there and get. Who knows? Maybe Casario's got another big trade up his sleeve, but it doesn't seem that way. So,
hey, Casario, if you're listening, don't make any more moves, please.
Yeah.
You did enough. You did enough.
Yeah. But the thing I really think about with the cap space, and this is what I thought about here, maybe the move is not necessarily an offseason move, but maybe it's having that money available in the middle of the year when the trade deadline shows up. If you feel like you need to, something to get over the hump in the middle of the season, if you've got the money to do it, like that's one of the reasons trades don't happen as often in the NFL is the salary cap is fairly restrictive from time to time, and teams, 6, 7, 8 weeks into the season have spent a lot of that cap space on, extensions or going and getting free agents to fill in for injured guys. So I wonder if maybe they keep the powder dry for that midseason move as well. That's something I've kind of kept my eye on.